Well, I wanted it to be very much a love story, but to be about long relationships and what happens to love after the first flush, after the first excitement. Not to be pessimistic, but to be realistic about how time changes relationships, how familiarity changes. And I also wanted to write, I mean, there are lots of themes in the book, but I wanted to write about Europe and travel and what we hope to get from travel, how we hope that travel, being in a new city, will change us. The married couple, the family in the novel, go on this huge journey in the hope that it will make things better, and the effect isn't what they expect. I'm pleased to say no. No. No, I mean, what has happened since writing the book, a lot of people have said, you know, I'm married to Douglas. I know that man. And the third character in the novel, there's Douglas, there's Connie, his wife, and there's Albie, their son, who's an adolescent, a very difficult teenager. A lot of people have said they recognize Albie. I don't have a teenage son. You know, I'm not a scientist. I think, as far as I know, my relationship is very happy and strong. So, no, it's all fantasy, but at the same time, you hope that it's recognizable, and you hope that you're writing about people's real fears and concerns and anxieties. I want it to be sort of deeply recognizable. Certainly, it's true that since I finished the book, I've heard lots of real-life versions of this, because you know, when you have a family, that becomes the complete center of your life. You know, you're raising your children becomes your activity together. It's the thing you all share. Yeah. And when the child leaves home, then suddenly there's this huge hole, and you have to rediscover each other. And I think it's a very vulnerable time. Yes, I think also it's true to say that when I was a kid, 50 felt pretty old, and now I'm 48, it doesn't feel as old as it used to. It feels still quite young. And I think that idea of starting a new life in your late 40s, early 50s is quite tempting, perhaps. It's a trauma. I think it's a huge trauma. Certainly in the book, it's a huge trauma for Douglas. I mean, I don't want to say what happens in the end. It's not predictable. It's sort of neither, well, I won't say anything about it. Yeah, I think it can be terrifying. I think the sudden prospect of loneliness is terrifying for Douglas in particular, because he's been lonely before. And then he meets this woman who kind of saves him, and then suddenly she's leaving again. I think that can be a huge catastrophe in people's lives, yes. But the book isn't pessimistic. It's sad in places, but I hope it's ultimately uplifting. I think it's natural. I think it's a natural instinct to want, you know, to hold on to one's youth and freedom. It's hard in a book like this not to be finger wagging. You know, I talked about this book it was interesting, when I talked about this book in Italy, a lot of people said, so are you anti-marriage? Do you not really believe in long-term relationships? And that's really not the case. I mean, it's more a case that to write about a mutually open, honest, happy couple is sort of boring. You know, you need to explode things a little. So, yeah, this desire for freedom, for escape, I think is more interesting than a couple who are perfectly content and happy. I think I wanted to get a sense of movement. You know, the novel is about a journey across Europe, and we tend to experience travel in a very episodic way. You know, we're at the train station, we're in the restaurant, we're in the hotel. And also a journey through 25 years of a family. And I wanted that to be like looking through a photo album. Here's the day we went to the beach, here's the day we had this argument, here's the day we crashed the car. So I thought the best way to get that sense of movement through time and space was through these very short chapters. I think maybe it's also the influence of screenwriting. When you write a screenplay, you break it down into blocks of action, beats, they call them, and every beat has a purpose and a kind of a title. And I think with this book, I wanted it to have a cinematic quality, while at the same time being absolutely a novel. No, not really. No, I mean, I suppose what I mean is that I'm influenced by film structure, but I'm also aware that in a novel you can do things that you can't do in film. Novels are a very interior form. They're a sort of first-person form. They're about how you think and feel, whereas movies are inevitably about the question that people ask is, what do I say, what do I do? You know, of course movie characters have an inner life, but it's expressed through the actors' emotions, not through the writing necessarily. So for many, many reasons, it's a very hard book to adapt. It's also very expensive, you know, because it goes to Paris, Amsterdam, through Italy, through Spain, and it covers 25 years, and it's epic. Yeah. So I think it's a hard one to adapt. I think both. I try not to think too much about a reader's gender. I mean, the fact is that in Britain, at least, about 70 to 80% of the reading public is female. But you have to believe that they're open-minded enough and, you know, to read about male characters, you know, to have a male character at the centre of the book. I never think of that as a problem. And so far, you know, the book has largely been read by women, and I think there's been a sense of recognition, not just for the female character's desire to escape, but for the male. I think a lot of female readers see their husbands in the book. And again, you know, I try not to stereotype or think too much about gender expectations, what readers want to read. But yeah, it's something I try and block out of my mind, because there's no way of knowing really who's going to respond to the book. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I was very nervous. Yeah. But she's nothing like Connie, and I'm nothing like Douglas, so we were okay. But yeah, inevitably, if you write about, you know, problems in a long relationship, and you're in a long relationship, it's inevitable that, you know, that there'll be some search for revelation. Yeah. But I always write away from my life. You know, I never write. I never use dialogue. I never use events. I'm always careful not to steal. So it was okay.
You're very cautious.
Well, also it's about you know, there's a word. I don't think it's a French word, but there's a word uxorious, which is the English word meaning love of one's wife, devotion to one's wife, and it's a book about an uxorious man. So you know, in that respect, I was okay.